everybody. This is Jake. Happy Saturday afternoon. It is January 4th. I hope you all had a great Christmas and a great New Year's. Today's going to be a relatively short video. I am positive. I don't have a script in front of me. It's something I thought about as I was making my coffee yesterday morning because there was an interaction that I had with my wife, and I'd like to talk to you about it. But before we do that, fellas, I hope y'all are doing great mentally and emotionally. If you're watching on the YouTube, or if you came over from Instagram or Facebook, welcome. This is the men's portion of my channel where I just talk about mental health and emotional health and how important it is to us men, because I know that we tend to put these kinds of things off, or we tend to not think that they're all that important, or that we just power through them, that we don't need any help. But sometimes we need a little bit of help. And this is not professional therapeutic advice or psychological advice or any of that stuff. I'm not licensed or any of that. But I've put in the work, and I've gone to licensed therapists, and I've read several books that have helped me acquire a very decent tool book in order to process and manage my mental and emotional states in a positive way. And it has helped me so much in my journey of getting out of my depression, my chronic depression and stress, and my self-sabotaging past. I'm still working on it. Not everybody's perfect. I'm never going to be perfect, but I'm going to have to keep working on it. But with these tools, it's definitely made my life a lot easier, especially when I recognize when I'm going off the rails a bit. So, this sounds like something that you relate to, or ladies, if you got a man and you think that he could benefit from any of these, just send him this way. One of these videos hopefully helps. If I help even one person, then I've done what I set out to do with these videos. And that makes me, I get something out of it insofar as I get this kind of stuff out of my head and the information out there, right? But just knowing that it could potentially help somebody else, that's a good feeling. And I hope that it does. So let's get into it. Today we're talking about being proactive rather than reactive. That sounds like something that you struggle with. I struggled with it a lot in the past. I still have these little spurts, and I'm going to talk to you about one of them right now. So the other morning, my wife and I, she wakes up earlier than I do most days. So she's gotten to the habit of making the coffee for us. And I have been in the habit of making the coffee lately, or at least setting it up for the next day. So what we do is we go to Costco, we get Charleston roast coffee, or Charleston coffee beans. I don't recall the actual brand name, but it says Charleston on there. Really good beans. You should get them if you're a Costco member. But it's neither here nor there, right? So we have a grinder, coffee grinder, and I grind beans up into this coffee grinder, and I set the grinder next to the pot and the filter, so that way all she has to do is dump the coffee beans in. I don't pre-fill the water anymore. We did that one time, and she overfilled it on accident because I didn't tell her. So we don't do that, but it's pretty easy. She doesn't have to clean anything out. It's all ready for her. All she has to do is fill the coffee pot up with water and then put the coffee grinds into the coffee filter. So she's digging them out. I get up and I'm ready to take the dog out. She looks at me, as she's scooping, and looks, she's having a little bit of difficult time. And she asked me this: is there a reason that you didn't grind more coffee beans? Now, in my head, and I'm just waking up, so I'm a little grumpy, but in my head, what it sounded like was it was accusatory. as if I intentionally just don't grind enough coffee beans or didn't grind enough coffee beans for her. This is the first time I'm hearing this, but I intentionally did not grind enough coffee beans for her in order to make it more difficult for her to get the coffee grinds out of the grinder. So instead of recognizing and then controlling my response, and I'm not giving myself an excuse, but this was my response. Well, I guess I'll just grind more coffee beans from now on. How do you think that went over with her? About as well as anything goes over, fellas, when we get a little snippy with women, with our women. Didn't go over too well. And I just turned around and walked out. That was the end of that conversation. So when I come back in, and as I'm walking, I recognize that I probably could have handled that differently. And I should have handled that differently. So I come back and we're talking about it. And she admits, she said, look, I know how it sounded. I probably could have asked you the question a little bit different. So she's like, I probably should have said something. And I don't remember the exact words, but I think this is probably pretty close. She said, look, what I should have said was, look, I really appreciate you getting the coffee ready for me to just make it in the morning. I would just, you know, if you wouldn't mind, would you mind grinding more coffee beans from now on? That's all. That's all that. And I would have been like, absolutely. But we both recognized, we both recognized that we could have done something different. I could, and me especially, because this is something I've been working on, and this is not to put any flack her way, all right. But that was just the interaction that we had in that particular scenario. But the point of this is that I, as a man, should have been more proactive in how I handled the situation. What do you mean by proactive? And what I mean by proactive, and I'm going to pull up the definition here: creating or controlling. This is in the Merriam-Webster's dictionary. Creating, controlling a situation by causing something to happen, rather than responding to it after it has happened. So being reactive is reacting to a situation after it's happened. Being proactive is recognizing it and controlling the outcome before it happens, or at least attempting to. So if I had been, and this ties into some other videos that I have in the past, some of my earlier videos, in order to be proactive, you have to be mindful and you have to be present and you have to be aware. That is essential in being proactive. In being proactive in situations that are happening, in reading situations that are happening right now. Now, you obviously can be proactive in planning your day because, if you plan your days out and you manage your time well, then you're probably going to have a good day. You're probably going to have a good week if that's what you do. And you manage your time and your days efficiently. But as certain situations and scenarios are happening in real time with real time interactions between you and your wife or whatever, your girlfriend, I don't know. As these interactions are happening, there's going to be conflict. It's inevitable. Nobody's perfect. But your ability to anticipate and control what you say and how you say it to the other person, or maybe you see that it's going to be heading not in the greatest places, but how can I minimize that damage, or how can I make it a little more not pleasurable, but a little more bearable to where we don't get to that spot? What part can I play to minimize the fallout? Because it's going to go somewhere that, or maybe you're comfortable with them. But if you're somebody like me, like how I used to be, I cannot stand conflict. I can't stand it. I couldn't stand it. Can stand it a lot more now, but I couldn't stand it. I didn't like it. It was uncomfortable. But being able to recognize, and this takes a lot of practice, a ton of practice, and headaches and all sorts of different things, but reading body language is an important one. Being proactive in reading how they're sitting, how they're moving, their facial expressions, how their tone is changing. It's a tough one, but all of these things come together in being proactive rather than reactive and controlling the outcome of the conversation. But that means being mindful and aware and present. And there's always a fine line between listening to respond and listening just to listen, or in listening to understand rather, especially when you're trying to be proactive. So one of the tricks that I learned, it's not a trick, it's just I shouldn't say trick. One of the tools rather, right? Because this is my tool belt. One of the tools that I learned was whenever we're in these situations, it's better for me to take the time that I need to formulate a response. A lot of people don't take that time. They're automatically trying to figure out how they're going to respond. And I know because I see it all the time. It's like, well, it's like you're not really listening to me. You're just trying to tell me your side. And that's what we do nowadays. Like that's how we work nowadays, and um and it can be frustrating. But if you're thoughtful, if you're present, if you're aware, if you're mindful, then you can figure out how to respond in a positive, a constructive, impactful way to alleviate certain situations. Or maybe it's a pleasant situation and you're just, you know, trying to make it better. I don't know. Trying to trying to bring more to the table. So what you could say, and in the situation that I gave you, but in other ones, is if you're asked a question that takes a little more thought, you can say certain things, and this is how you work to communicate, and this is going to help you on your path to proactivity. Is I haven't really given that a whole lot of thought. Well, just give me a moment. Just give me a moment to respond. You can say stuff like that. I didn't know you could. I thought you had to respond right then and there, and I would just shoot right from the hip. And that's not even like a trick or anything. It's just like in hindsight's. It sounds to me like common sense, but it wasn't common sense to me. As I felt like I had to respond right away, and it wasn't always a great response. And depending on the situation, it could have been a my response could have been something to bite, because that's how I felt attacked. So that's all I really want to talk about today is just being proactive. I know it's easier said than done, but if you practice it, it's like anything else in life. You practice makes perfect. Okay? So practice being mindful, being present, being aware, being observant, stepping back when you're interacting with somebody. And I've learned this and I'm learning it, and it is it's hard to do nowadays, but focusing your full attention on the conversation that's happening right in front of you, the interaction that's happening right in front of you, focusing everything that you've got on it, and really listening. Because being a good listener is part of being a proactive responder, or a proactive. What term could I use? Being a proactive. We'll just say being better at controlling the outcome of certain situations in your life that you run into. We'll say that. But being proactive rather than reactive is going to help immensely with that. So I know that was a little long winded, but I couldn't help it. I was I've fallen in that trap so many times, and I've hindsight has brought me back to reality. It's like, man, I could have handled that way better. I could have said this if I would have taken a step back and thought about how I was going to respond. Then this would have gone way different. As it was happening, I could have observed and seen how she was, how the tone changed, how she did this with her eyes or this with her body, and and then I could have responded differently if I had looked for these cues or had listened for these cues. So, yeah, I hope this kind of helps. I hope this helps in some sort of a way. Be mindful, be present, be aware. I know I say that a lot, but it really does help. Be mindful, present, and aware of what's happening right in front of you, and be thoughtful. Take a step back. It's okay to say, I need just a little bit of time, or it's okay to say, hey, let me, give me a sec so I can formulate a response. Or you don't even, sometimes you don't even have to say anything. You just take a second, think about what you're going to say, and then say it rather than reacting. And I guarantee you that the outcomes are going to be a lot more different than they would have been otherwise. I hope this video helps a little bit. I know we as men need to be a little more proactive in how we talk to our wives and our girlfriends, but it's important. It's important in our development, mentally and emotionally, and it's important in our relationships. So if you took something out of this, I enjoy making these videos. I look forward to the next one, and I hope you all come back and let me know what y'all think in the comment section. Let me know about maybe a subject that you'd want me to talk about or that you want to talk to me about. I'll listen. It's all good, and sounds like a daunting task sometimes, these kinds of things that we know we have to face in ourselves, but I can guarantee you that you can do it. I believe in you, and if you don't believe in yourself, then I will believe in you until you gain the confidence and self-esteem to believe in it yourself. So, to believe in yourself. So, until the next one, this has been a lot of fun, and I hope you all have a great weekend, and I will see you on the next one. Take care.